Hello, everyone, and good evening. If you're on the Pacific Coast, welcome. I am Brad Johnson, the Reality Whisperer from realitywhisperer.com, and thank you so much for tuning into the Reality Whisperer Webcast. So we have a very exciting show tonight as we're going to be talking about dimensional beings. So we got a lot of ground to cover tonight. We're going to have a pretty long episode, I would say. Should go around about 90 minutes or so. But again, at the latter half of tonight's episode, we'll be taking questions from the viewing audience. So we have our chat room available on the watch page, and I want to thank everybody that's on the chat room tonight. We'll be getting to your questions later on, so if you do have a question, make sure you write it down, just keep it safe, and then once we get into the Q&A, just feel free to copy and paste it into the chat, and then of course we'll be taking questions either through myself with the higher mind or through Adronis as well too. So before we officially get started, we're going to go through our announcements. First is, of course, portaltoascension.org, live online conscious events. A lot of exciting events coming up. Again, I will be doing an event with Portal to Ascension starting in the month of June. And again, it'll be called the Dream Mastery Workshop. We have a very exciting, full-scale, large online conscious event coming up in August, which is called Extraterrestrial Disclosure. It's going to feature myself, my friend Rob Gauthier. It's also going to feature Corey Good, James Gilliland, all different kinds of amazing speakers. And again, you can check that out on portaltoascension.org. So one of our happy affiliates here on the Reality Whisperer Webcast. And of course, we have the Pot of Gold YouTube channel with my friend Rainbow Lightbeing. Again, he's putting up some new videos. Again, just some really neat compilation videos for people that are just have very busy lives and may not be able to check out a lot of the stuff that's out there. He's putting together some really amazing compilation videos, true history, secret info, and hidden knowledge. So you can just type in capital P-O-T of capital G-O-L-D, Pot of Gold on YouTube search, and you'll see his channel. So feel free to go ahead and check that out. And of course, we have the Adronis Open Forum, which is happening this coming Saturday, May 28th, starting at 12 p.m. Pacific time. What's very unique about this particular event is that it is an event entirely committed to topics and questions provided by the participants, which means you guys, who are the participants of this event, will be able to suggest the topics that you want Adronis to talk about, and of course any questions that you have as well too. So it's kind of like a very large group session in that particular way. I've done group sessions with quite a few people in one particular sitting, both local and online, but again, this is just kind of an event that really kind of captures that, where you're all just kind of huddled in a private group and you can share topics and questions with Adronis. So again, that is happening this coming Saturday, so you can go to realitywhisperer.com and you can go ahead and register for that event. It's going to be really exciting. And of course, coming up this coming Sunday is Inside the Secret Space Program, a free online event. So again, it's a free interview, kind of like a discussion panel show, you could say. And I'm going to have Randy Kramer and Alina Kopolnik, two members of the Secret Space Program, that are going to be online and sharing a lot of their own wisdom. I'll be having a lot of different questions for both of them, and of course, questions for both of them to answer, I guess you could say, at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of exciting questions and information and insight that's going to be brought forward here inside the Secret Space Program. And again, I am looking to make this into a monthly thing. So I'm also just feeling free to tell anybody who may have experience in the Secret Space Program, maybe who's done the 20 and back, or maybe who's done the 50 and back, as Alina Kopolnik has. If you guys have that information on the Secret Space Program, I would love to hear from you as well too. Of course, I go through a screening process with the people, the potentials that may have information relating to the SSP. But again, it's a topic I would really love to get more into. I've always found it very exciting once Corey Good started to talk about this, and it's an incredible amount of information. It's a lot of information I've pulled out through Adronis relating to the Secret Space Program, so I'm always really, really happy to communicate with others who have been part of the SSP. But anyways, this is coming up this coming Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on Google Plus Hangouts. So you guys can interact, ask questions to both myself, also to Randy Kramer, and to Alina, and to myself. So it'll be, again, like a discussion panel type event. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's show. And the first is that we have a news article here. And this is a kind of a current news segment here, but we're basically seeing a news article where it says Barack Obama on brink of revealing intelligent aliens visit Earth. Now, this is a link that I'm going to be putting into the video description once this episode has been archived tonight. And you guys can go into the video description and you can check it out. It basically involves Stephen Bassett, who has been just following the whole idea of exopolitics and looking more into the extraterrestrial disclosure agenda, who is very, very confident that before the end of this year, we're going to see something. We're going to see some type of disclosure take place. So a very, very fascinating article you guys can check out. And he's just very, very confident that, before we end the year, and Adronis has even said this as well, too, that there is going to be some type of disclosure coming out before the end of the year of 2016. So fingers crossed, seeing how things go with that. All right, so that was just a little news segment to get people, seeing what's happening in current events. And again, I like to follow things relating to extraterrestrial disclosure, relating to ET contact, and any other particular type of phenomena of that nature. So that one just caught my eye a couple days ago. So I thought I would include that in tonight's broadcast before we get started. And now we are officially going to get started with tonight's show. So we're going to firstly talk about dimensional beings, but more so in the idea elemental beings. So what are the elemental beings? Well, we have the ondines, I believe that's how it's pronounced, water elementals, the sylphs, air elementals, the gnomes, earth elementals, the salamanders, the fire elementals, the ethers, or the elder ethers, nature spirit elementals. As all elementals exist within different dimensions of reality, the beings discussed tonight represent in some way these elemental aspects. To be an elemental is to be created of the elements and to work with the elements of nature. So even us ourselves, as human beings, are elemental. The whole idea in that sense is that many of us just simply have forgot how we are able to work within the elements of nature. But when we're looking at an elemental being, we're looking at one who is a force of nature. Now, there is a potential difference between a human being and an elemental. Or again, you can refer to them as dimensional beings, elemental beings, etc. But the general difference is that human beings have a very specific quality. Human beings have mortal, free will, impact. Human beings have the capability of steering the course of history. We have the ability to change history. We have the ability to move ourselves forward and steer into the direction. We have a very large impact upon this planet. Elementals do not. They are not capable of writing anything in regards to our history books. They are not capable of steering the direction as it relates to Earth. The reason being is because they act a lot more like a force of nature. They are not the idea of saying that I'm going to come in here and I'm going to run for president, right? And then we're going to change the entire landscape as we know the world to be, right? Okay, here we go. We got President Fairy here. We're not going to see that. So the whole idea is that the elementals are here to work together with nature. They are stewards of nature. They work together with the earth. They work together with trees and plants. Everything that represents nature, the water, the air, the earth, the fire, all of that is a stewardship that the elementals are working together with. So we're going to look a little bit more in regards to the idea of the elemental kingdom. Now, of course, this does not tackle every single elemental that exists. It still is a pretty short list when it comes to the enormous amount of elementals that are available in different dimensions. But how did this all happen? How did the elemental race, excuse me a sec. How did the elemental race truly separate between man and basically went off into these different dimensions? Well, the biggest theory represents Atlantis. Then in regards to the destruction of Atlantis, everything separated. So basically, if you're looking even into different scriptures within the Bible, it says that the world of the angel, the world of the jinn, many other different worlds were all cast out when humanity, quote unquote, screwed things up. And that's basically what happened with Atlantis. We basically caused this entire disaster to happen, and the world just got swept by this overnight change. Within a one single night, Atlantis plummeted, and that is where everything changed, where we had so many different forms of elemental realms that were coexisting with the earth, that were basically being sealed and saying, nope, you can't be here, can't be here. The human beings have committed ultimate taboo, and so they are not allowed to get any particular type of interventional assistance with a lot of different types of beings that would exist in these elemental extra-dimensional realms. And so these realms were sealed. And so after Atlantis, and beginning with our own civilization, we had much more of a casting out and a cutting out point relating to the idea of the elementals. So basically, in regards to how they can enter our world, was through specific phases, through specific gateways that would open, kind of like loose fits, loose areas, loose openings that would come into an intersection between their realm and our own worldly realm. So basically, in ancient times past, it was very common for human beings to bump into elves, to bump into fairies, to bump into pixies, to bump into jinn, to bump into beings that we could refer to as the angels that have, wings on their back, etc. In those ancient times, that was commonplace. That was just something that was natural. Now we just are basically being laughed at if we talk about, I talked to a fairy today. What? Huh? Are you crazy? Right? So we basically have been dogmatized to the idea of feeling that, it's not about the elemental realms. There's no such thing as fairies or leprechauns or gnomes or elves or anything of that nature. There's just us. There's the animals. There's the plants. There's the air we breathe. There's the water we drink. There's the earth we stand on. There's the fire that keeps us warm. That's it. Nothing else. No. That is not the earth. That is not the earth that we truly are looking to get to know. So all of these particular beings that we're going to be talking about tonight, from the fairies to the elves to the sprites to the mermaids, etc., all of them do exist. But again, they are working in different planes of reality. They work in different realms. And again, at certain times, there are intersections between when those realms can connect and harmonize and align pertaining to our own dimensional realm, and that there can be some type of coexistence that happens between their presence and the presence of a human being or human beings. So again, we'll be talking more about that this evening. Okay, so we're going to look firstly into the polarities of elementals, because people will say, well, you know what, Brad, I think I know some fairies or some elves that really weren't nice to human beings. Maybe they're like evil in that way. Well, let's take a look at the idea of the polarities of elementals. Elemental beings hold different polarities. The reason for this is to serve as mirrors for man. Like anything else that's on the planet, everything is a living mirror. Where there has been karmic history in certain lands, the elementals served as the mirrors for such karma. So through wars, through all kinds of destruction of nature, through carelessness. Many elementals are extremely protective of Mother Nature and won't think twice about acting upon those who abuse her, at times violently. This is the result of many of them protecting the earth through their own stewardship. Other elementals would take matters into their own hands and attempt to frighten humans from lands so that injured lands could heal from the wars and emotional strife of humans. They were often depicted as evil or devilish for committing such deeds. Many had passion for the well-being of the earth over the welfare of humanity. Now, there are a lot of stories you can find in like Scottish traditions, Celtic traditions, etc., that basically they were blaming elves or fairies, etc., for actually creating ailments and actually making mankind sick in that particular way. This may or may not have been true. But the whole idea is that, again, understand that elementals are once again mirrors of humanity. That the reason why they're here is that they are just becoming a different type of perspective for us to look at. They are all part of acting with an equivalent exchange. So it's kind of like how sometimes animals will act up. If there's been a lot of violence around, or there's been a lot of territorial disputes or what have you, and sometimes there can be animal attacks or anything of that nature. Again, animals acting symbiotically with nature will again perform those particular types of acts. elementals in that way, based upon equivalent exchange, based upon the karmic nature of the land, based upon the karma of the individual or individuals that encounter them, will determine their own particular type of reality based upon the perspective of how they see themselves and how the elementals are interacting with mankind. So we do have elementals that are very loving, that are very supportive, that will love to assist humanity in different ways, and we have those who despise humanity, that really do not like us because they feel that we have violated the earth so much that they just they're enraged with us. There's some groups like that, right? So it's definitely a mixed bag pertaining to the idea of polarity. But again, there's a lot of people who really are able to go into different spaces and they're able to feel the presence of elementals. Some are actually able to see elementals, are able to see fairies, are able to see little sprites, flying around the flowers, enriching them with essence. All of that is possible. It all just depends in regards to alignments. It all just represents the idea in regards to agreements as well too. So yes, elementals are very real. They have been a part of our past, and they have been profoundly talked about through the course of our history. And this is in almost every single culture. Every ancient civilization has talked about some particular type of occurrence relating to the idea of what we would term to be elementals. So again, we will be looking into those elemental dimensional beings here. So again, polarity, absolutely. That is all part of the process when we are looking into the idea of the mirrors of reality, about what we're able to cast and what has happened karmically with us. So right now we're going to take a look at some elemental videos. Now, these are some videos I was actually able to find on the internet and had some pretty interesting and convincing content within them. So we're going to pull up the very first video here. And this was taken by an individual on Facebook. And he didn't really provide too much information about where this was taken or anything of that nature. But I remember just looking at this video and I was just amazed. Just seeing like these little golden sprites, these little golden fairies flying around. Quite a few of them as well too in this video. Basically, it could be seen as a type of enchanted forest. And they look very insectoid in that way, but kind of, again, glowing light insectoid type energy. All right, and here's a second one that was taken a little while back in California. And this is that of a very small elemental being that actually went into someone's backyard. Looks like it's either sunrise or sunset, but is basically skipping across the pool and being able to see a shadow there of this little being just skipping to the other side. And here's a close-up. So again, a small, somewhat illuminated elemental being, and just being able to really, quote-unquote, defy gravity. And again, this happened in California. So this is showing that a veil is thinning. And that basically where we're going in the decades ahead, it could be very, very common for us to actually see elemental beings like this on a more frequent level. So again, sharing the reflection being cast inside a pool as this being is just skipping along, defying the laws of gravity, right from one side of the pool to the other. And we are seeing some other particular beings here, other elementals. Now this one basically looks like just walking legs in that way. You can tell that there's very strong, disproportionate figures as it relates to this one. The other one's kind of more in the background, so it's a little harder to see that one. But this one, just like tall walking legs, just walking through. Kind of like a celestial elemental being in that particular way. Very etheric. You can almost feel that there's an energetic transparency or semi-transparency when it comes to these particular beings. And that these beings were caught on camera, just walking down the road here, walking down this path. All right, and the final one is just showing that of a small, looks like an orb that's just floating around an individual's table here. And then we're seeing a few other orbs that will be coming into the shot. And just seeing this almost looks like it's something walking across the table. And now we're seeing some other orbs just kind of fading in and fading out. And of course, orb videos are pretty common on YouTube. You can find a lot of them. But I just found this one kind of interesting. Okay, so again, that's just giving a very small idea about other particular elemental beings that have been caught on camera. I'm sure there's a lot more as well too, but again, I just wanted to get kind of the 3 popular ones that I really enjoyed and put that on tonight's broadcast. So yes, the elementals are very real. Being able to see that footage is just absolutely amazing. So for me, in my own personal way, have I ever seen the type of elemental being? I have seen, well again, I have seen mantis beings. So you can kind of look in the idea that mantis beings can be somewhat extra-dimensional in that particular way. Of course, I've had my own visions in that way as well too, but as far as like being able to see like an elf or a fairy or a gnome or anything like that, no. That hasn't been something that I've encountered yet. Hoping to, but not yet. Again, not everybody on this planet is going to be able to see elementals. It's just there's very unique videos that come about and share a lot of incredible experiences about how these beings interact, how they walk, what their posture is like, what they look like. To me, it's just absolutely amazing looking into that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward into tonight talking about the fairies, the Fae Kingdom. Seen as the stewards and elemental forces behind nature, contribute their own essence to the beauty of vegetation. They live within the vessels of nature. So basically you can see fairies living inside trees. You can see them living inside rocks. You can see them living inside plants. That can be just much of their natural habitat, basically going from one dimension to another, where to us it says, oh, how can a little fairy live inside a flower? From their particular perspective, that flower could be as large as a city. From our particular perspective, it's just a small little flower that's there. Or again, a small tree. And to them, that is an enormous habitat. So again, this is basically what it means is when you're fading in and out of dimensions, you're actually able to absorb yourself in what one perspective looks like just a finite, tiny little object. From their perspective, as they're going into that dimensionality, they're able to switch it, to fold themselves, and come into another dimension where that tree is now as vast as a continent, right? That can happen. It just all depends in regards to where these dimensions end up. They do not impact the law of free will, as previously talked about. They are stewards and facilitators, not mortals. So the reason I'm saying mortals is because mortal would basically be, in this instance, utilized as those who operate within free will, who can create impact. So basically looking at the human being as the mortal. Many different divisions of fairy, such as elves, gnomes, sprites, dwarves, brownies, mermaids, etc. All of those are types of fae. And again, all a fairy really is one who is fair, or one of the fair, in that particular way. Now, some fairies can be several inches tall, maybe just no more bigger than like your index or pinky finger, and others that are the size of a human being, or some even larger, ones that even look like the Nephilim, that are like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet tall. Those particular types of fairies can exist. Again, it all just depends in regards to what dimension intersects with our own to get an idea about who these beings are, where they come from, what their appearance is, and just in regards to how they live. Fairies come in different polarities, ones that are loving, ones that are against interacting with humans. All right, so I just got a little small slideshow here that is just depicting some particular art as it relates to fairies. So again, a lot of people can see the fairies as winged beings. There are also beings without wings, and they can just walk right through the forests, and it'll appear just as if we're looking into another human being's eyes, being able to see another human body. Again, one with, this could be like a sprite in that way, just almost like a Tinkerbell, just a couple of inches long with long butterfly-like wings. And this one is more of an insectoid type fairy. There's also ones that can look like dragons as well too. But that's just giving an overall view of some basic fairy archetypes. Okay, so now we're going to look into the elves. So the elves, again, are quite interesting, and they've been popularized a lot by Lord of the Rings, right? Looking into the elven kingdoms. But the elves are really kind of like the protectors, the caregivers, the warriors that represent fighting for nature. Even if you're looking into a lot of ancient texts that has talked about the elf is always, completely tied in with nature. Nature means everything to them, and they will basically give up their lives to protect nature. That is their own calling. Now, elves themselves can be small, or they can be human-sized as well. There are, again, different types of polarities of elves. There's like the woodsland elves or mountain elves. There's also dark elves in that particular way. So again, there's different types of polarities as we look into the elven kingdom. But really, if we're looking at elves, I'm even looking back into, back when I was a kid, I had a Nintendo, and I was playing Legend of Zelda, right? And I looked at Link. Well, Link was an elf, right? It's one of my favorite characters. And so I kind of look at that. So, Legend of Zelda, how about that? But of course, looking into Lord of the Rings as well, too. Seeing these brave warriors, protectors, fighters, caregivers, and they just see Earth, they see nature as their mother, and they would die to protect her. Okay, then we have the dwarves, right? So then we have kind of the smaller, stocky kind of human beings, maybe 3, 4, 4.5 feet tall, kind of very large head, smaller body, just very stout in that way. I've kind of like the long beards, again, kind of like looking into Lord of the Rings as well too. And a lot of them basically have been said to exist kind of like where a lot of the mountains are, maybe like the Swiss Alps, even just in like caves as well too. Valleys, all just depends where you are in the world. But there have been reportings of particular dwarves, again, just ones that look right out of the folklore. Of course, we have the gnomes. Now, this was just actually taken on the internet. There was a video of a person that basically put this up in a very, very tiny gnome here with the large pointed hats as well, too. They can be very mischievous. They can pull pranks on people, apparently. They're really into, again, gardening. They're all about, again, working together with nature. They can just basically shift in and shift out of dimension. But again, we have like the idea of the garden gnomes, right? So again, the idea of having a gnome in your garden in that way. But this particular video was just showing this very small being. I wasn't able to get the video, but this very small being that was kind of just trying to be intimidating in that particular way. But again, has the little pointed hat there. So again, the gnomes representing kind of like a smaller version of elves, or again, not elves, sorry, of dwarves. But again, still kind of in that same size range altogether. But you're always remembering that pointy hat. That is what represents the gnome. I'm trying not to say garden gnomes, but the gnomes themselves. Again, they can be mischievous. They can be pranksters. They can be tricksters. They can even being able to change their shapes as well too. Now we're going to come into another very interesting one. This is the jinn, the genies in that way. Now, the genies, or the jinn, once coexisted with man during the beginning of our creation. They are born of smokeless fire. The angels bowed down to God's creation of man. The jinn did not. Many saw humanity as inferior to them. They were cast out of the human world when the earth became broken. So again, looking into the times of Atlantis, perhaps even earlier than that. Angels and jinn alike. This may represent the disaster of Atlantis. Jinn are often called shapeshifters and possess a great deal of supernatural abilities. Jinn can also be known as shadow people. There are factions of jinns, jinn, some that are willing to work with humanity in service, some that are against humanity. Some may also be working alongside the Draco Empire. Okay, now basically, from what I've received from a lot of research, that the jinn have basically been a very big threat. They have actually worked together with the Draco, with the reptilians in that sense, certain particular types of factions. But a lot of them really are not happy that humanity is here. They felt that they lived very peacefully with the planet, that they had the planet all to themselves. They interacted with nature, and they interacted with a lot of the other elementals. But as soon as man came along, they were like, oh, for God's sakes, are you kidding me? Right? And they get this attitude problem. Right? Now, again, not all jinn are like that. Again, there's different polarities. But a lot of them have basically functioned as shapeshifters, that they can actually work together very deeply in a type of seduction. So they can appear as very beautiful people, very beautiful women, very beautiful men, and they want to actually create these seductions. And there's actually a hybridization program going on as it relates to jinn, right? Some people are actually contracted to have these types of personal interactions with the jinn or the genie. So it's kind of like going all the way back to, ancient Arabic, where we're looking into Aladdin and the lamp and the genie, etc. We're also looking at King Solomon and how he was able to imprison 72 different jinn pertaining to them, creating outbreaks and wreaking havoc and creating ailments, and basically telling them why they're doing what they're doing. And now, so a lot of these particular beings that we may see, the kind of astral, quote-unquote, parasites, the shadow beings, that I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, I have shadow beings in my room. I have shadow beings. What's going on? Well, it could be one of two things. That could be jinn, or that could be Draco reptilians doing astral projection, different types of astral projections coming forward. But again, jinn can be very, very common as it relates to shadow beings, and just being able to look like at this silhouette of a very kind of large, maybe muscular type figure, and basically having these kind of like hypnotic red eyes, and basically able to put people into trances. So I'm not attempting to scare anybody, but again, this is just basically what's been reported. So the jinn themselves are part of a lot of these particular types of astral beings that will just impose themselves in and attempt to assert their will, right? And again, there are hybridization programs. The reason why they're doing this is that they can coexist in our own particular realm as well too, having our genetics and their genetics combined so that they can come back to Earth. So that's just kind of a brief history with the jinn, is that a lot of them can be tricksters, they can be pranksters, they can be very aggressive as well too. They can put diseases on people. It's a very, very mucky history as it pertains to the jinn. But the jinn have basically been probably the most opposing factor in the elemental kingdom as it relates to man. Just not all of them, but many of them do not like human beings at all. And this is why a lot of them have sided with the Draco. And basically you have different types of jinn working together with these other aggressive groups and basically wreaking havoc. Again, all depends upon a person's encounter with them. There was actually an ex-girlfriend of mine who I took to a store, and we saw this big gigantic crystal ball, and she loved it, and it was actually a very good price. And then when she took it back to her place, she started gazing into the crystal ball, and there was a face of a jinn inside the crystal ball, right? So, very interesting story. I couldn't see it. It was basically just something that was contracted for her. And so the jinn themselves, as stated, they have been created out of smokeless fire or scorched fire in that particular way. And that they have incredible extrasensory perceptual abilities. They're able to shift in and out of dimensions just as easy it is for us to get up and walk from one space to another. They're able to change their shape, alter their appearance in that particular way. Again, they can project themselves as shadow beings. And again, the reason why they're existing as shadow is because they require the light of the earth to actually come into our realm. So basically, there is a certain vibrational habitat, a certain vibrational alignment that they need to get into. This is why jinn in the ancient times would actually be very fond of gems, because they contain all of the ancient life force of the earth, which is actually needed for them to coexist in this plane. So after they were cast out, they have been doing everything they possibly can to try and get back into this realm, because they love the earth. Where they exist, it just depends upon the jinn in question. It's not a beautiful earth from where they exist. It's a lot more mucky. It's a lot more shadowy. It can be a lot more of a type of hell in that particular way. So they want to come back into this particular earth, but in order for them to do that, they need to usurp energies. So again, humanity, human beings, have the most light out of anybody. And so they will attempt to usurp that idea, seduct the idea of a human being, again, posing as a beautiful person and getting funky in that way, and being able to create a type of hybridization program where their offspring is now part human, part jinn. And now they can use that offspring to kind of just usurp off their particular energies, or again, utilize them to come through these doorways to access the Earth Collective. And again, being able to feed, right? So being able to feed off of human beings. Again, maybe they still enjoy the gems, the natural ores that exist within the planet as well too. But it's kind of a long background for the jinn, but they have a very extensive background. But again, out of all of the elemental beings, they would be the ones that would probably have the most problem with human beings, from what I've researched. All right, so we're going to move on beyond the jinn, and we're going to come to, oops, see if I can find it here. Okay, on to mermaids. All right, everybody loves mermaids, absolutely. Now, mermaids do come in many different ways. This is kind of a convenient image of a mermaid here, but there are also mermaids that actually look kind of transparent, where you can actually have see-through skin of mermaids, actually ones that kind of look almost bald and actually have kind of like a grayish white type of skin, also kind of more of webbed hands, etc. So mermaids can look like that as well too. But mermaids, again, are just the elemental fairies, a merman right there, elemental fairies that exist within the oceans, and they are taking care of the habitats, again, existing in their own particular coplanar dimension. So being able to work together with other forms of sea life, marine life, and helping to maintain habitats. And again, different polarities pertaining to mermaids as well too. Ones that are very loving to humans, who people have interacted with. Again, others who may not be able to stand the human beings as well. So that is the mermaid kingdom. Okay, so now we have nature orbs. All right. So again, this is probably the most common thing I've seen out of people taking photos and being able to see all these beautiful illuminating orbs just floating through, and a lot of them can be found within very deep forests. So you're basically just walking around, you start taking snapshots with a camera, and you'll basically not even be able to see the person in the photo. You'll just basically see them covered with all of these orbs, about these nature spirits that are working together. And this would basically be like the type of ethereal elementals, basically very pure nature spirits, even human beings that have passed on, that have felt that they've wanted to connect more with the force, connect more with nature. And so when we're really looking at the idea of orbs, we can look into the idea of other spirits, other souls, souls of animals, souls of nature, souls of trees, souls of elementals, etc. All of these are very pure spirits, and they represent a high vibration of love. So basically, when you go into these very deep forests and you just feel this upliftment, it's like a wave hits you, and you're just feeling all of this love just blanketing around you. Well, that can give you the idea that you're inside an enchanted forest and looking into all of these beautiful elements of nature. Right? So basically, when we're looking at these orbs themselves, this can pertain to the idea of nature spirit elementals. Even when we're looking at spacecraft that look like gigantic orbs, very similar to the nature orbs, that can represent these beings as well too. It's not just the idea of thinking, okay, is it a nuts and bolts spacecraft? Well, no. It's basically you're peeling away a dimension, and you're now actually being able to see this beautiful, bright collective of energy that is in the sky, and just shining all this light upon you, being able to be thought interactive, being able to create figure eights or infinity signs, etc., as you think it, right? So again, this can also represent beings. This doesn't always represent spacecraft, all right? So that is the nature orbs. Again, just blessing spaces a lot too. When you're actually inside a place that is so blessed that you put like salt, sea salt, Himalayan crystal salt. You've blessed the space. You have beautiful crystals that are charged. You're filling all of this space with gorgeous energy, and you may see a lot of nature spirits coming in because they are attracted to that purity, and they're even attracted to certain individuals that are just so pure of heart, and they will just navigate themselves around your aura and just uplifting you with all of this loving energy. So again, there's a lot of beauty on our planet. Okay, moving on. Now we have the Sasquatch, right? Now, believe it or not, this is actually a dimensional being. This is actually a being that exists in other dimensions. They are somewhat scarce upon the planet, but the Sasquatch do exist. They have existed on Maldek, they have existed on Mars, and they exist on Earth. Now, they are, again, particular indigenous residents to the Earth. It was a Sasquatch, or the Bigfoot themselves, that were actually responsible for being the primary template to man's creation. So again, that's what happened millions upon millions of years ago, is that the beings, the ancient builder race, came here and saw the Sasquatch and saying, this is going to be our prototype, right? And then being able to contribute throughout the lines of the 22 different genetic programs. And the Sasquatch was the primordial template pertaining to man. So this is why, again, that evolution theory feels that, everything just evolves from apes in that sense. Well, it all started with the Sasquatch, but it's not in the idea of feeling that nature or the body itself is just going to naturally evolve into one form into another. That's not even possible. So it's more so looking into the idea that these were engineered. We were engineered pertaining to the Sasquatch. Now, what are they like? Well, I've had an individual, again, who is kind of like a celebrity, who I've talked to all the way back in 2009. And he had a neighbor who actually bumped into one of these guys, into one of these Sasquatches. Very friendly, very polite, not hostile at all. I was actually able to communicate with him telepathically and basically saying that he was doing some energy work in the area because there was basically a vortex within the neighborhood. And so Sasquatch was actually seen very tall, well over maybe 7.5 feet tall. Very intimidating looking, but very friendly, right? So a lot of them will exist in caves, a lot of them can be by mountains, etc. But they are a very ancient race, again, from Maldek, from Mars, and now on Earth. And basically existing very scarcely in that way. There's not a very large population of them. But again, there could be a lot more in different dimensions. But they are here, and there's quite a lot of intelligence. It's like they have a second density animalistic body, but they have very much a third and fourth density intelligence. Okay, so that is the Sasquatch. Now we're going to be moving on to the Argothans. Okay, they are dimensional beings. They exist within fourth density, contained inside the Earth. Now, the Argothans would probably be one of the most ancient forms of human beings that existed here in the Earth. Basically, the cosmic plan is that you will have certain stewards that are assigned to be the watchers of everything that takes place upon the planet. So the particular planet that is meant to be occupied with life will have watchers coming together and will start to nest inside the center of the Earth, or again, in the vaults of the Earth. It's not that we have a hollow Earth, we have a honeycomb or a clustered Earth. Basically, they will exist in the vaults of the Earth, and they will start overseeing the development of the planet. They are the caretakers. They're here to take care of the planet, ensure that everything forms an equilibrium. Sure, there can be skirmishes, there can be conflicts at times, but not something that will upset the entire balance of nature. So again, the Argothans represent this very ancient race or sects of race that have come here and settled within the interiors of the planet. And when you're living inside the planet, you're functioning in an entirely different density. And so that has been much of their goal, is to come here and take care of things. And to say that our Argothan stewards have really been able to take care of things is not too accurate. They've really dropped the ball on quite a few different things. But again, they are learning. To actually be a steward of a planet is to, again, going through a training process as well, too. So you will often have third, fourth, fifth density beings that will actually come in and nest themselves inside the planet, start creating their civilizations. And basically what happened is that they just got very much carried away into their own developments. They were not able to really work diligently with the common man and woman and child. It was more so in the idea of working with governments. It was more so in the idea of working together with Nazis, with a lot of different types of beings in that way, because who knows their agenda? But basically their overall responsibility is to work together with the common man, the common woman, the common child. And to my own particular feeling on this is that Atlantis changed a lot of things pertaining to that, because before the time to where Atlantis was going through those transformations that was happening, the Argothans were very loving to humanity, saying, hey, we're going to help you out. We're going to teach you how to kind of garden, how to take care of the earth. We're going to show you a lot of different things. We'll give you crystal technology. And now you can start to power your homes. You can start getting warmth out this. You can start getting information from this. This will power vehicles, etc. So all of the ancient crystal technology that Atlantis got came from the Argothans, right? And so when Atlantis fell, there definitely must have been quite a lot of animosity between the Argothan network and the human race. And they said, oh, these humans are just irresponsible, right? And so who knows, again, what shifted at that particular time. But again, a lot of what is happening right now is having these particular sects of Argothans within the Argothan network to eventually come forward and to share a lot more about their presence. Now again, they are polarized like anything else. But again, Argothans act like a force of nature. They are the inner earth aspect of nature. And that they are not here to steer the course of history as it pertains to Earth. The only beings that are allowed to do that are humans. That's how special we are. That's how unique we are. We are impacting the footprint of the Earth and saying, this is where we're going. This is what we're going to do. And that's part of the agreement. No other race, whether it be elemental, whether it be Argothan, whether it be extraterrestrial, etc., no other race can come down here and say, humans, stop it. Stop what you're doing. Fix yourselves up and move into more of a positive path. They can't do that. That's not in the contract to do. Human beings have this extensive policy of being free will expressors. And so they are the ones responsible, steering the course of Earth. It's kind of a frightening fact when you look at it in certain ways. But we are starting to learn. We're starting to develop ourselves, and we're moving more into the understanding of eventually moving more into a mature society. We're still kind of in that little bit of an adolescent, maybe young teenager stage, but we are getting to that point, and we are moving forward. And this is again why there has been a lot of interventional assistance, not only through extraterrestrials, but also through elementals as well too. A lot of people have been able to channel, to communicate with elementals. A lot of people have been able to channel, to communicate with animals, with nature, and basically helping to enrich their lives and becoming the example of that information, of that insight that they have received, and being able to move forward in their own lives. Because again, it's not up to one person to change the entire planet. And I know I've talked about that many times. But again, this is all part of why we are here. We're learning from a lot of these other particular faculties that are not having the same type of agenda, the same type of impact that human beings have, but they're still able to share their wisdom with us. And it's about us being able to really take that wisdom into account, because a lot of beings are just confused about how we act, about how we behave, about how we're constantly feeling that we are separate and that we must ridicule, we must be prejudiced, we must fight, we must deny, we must fear, we must despair, we must get angry, we must be afraid, we must be terrified. And they don't get it. They don't understand exactly why. That's even the ones that are really not seeing us in their favor don't get it. So how are these humans acting like this? What is going on, right? So, it's all part of how we have come here. Being able to see that we've been dropped on this planet in regards to our modern era, and not receiving any particular quote-unquote manual that allows us to navigate ourselves to becoming who we want to be. And so we have assistance. We have assistance from ETs. We have assistance from EDs. We have assistance from elementals, etc. But again, we have to put that in place. We're the builders. We're the ones building the projects. We're the ones playing in the sandbox. We're the ones shaping everything. And this is again why humanity could basically be seen as the most powerful creators, not only on the planet, but could very much be that in the galaxy and in the entire universe. That's how powerful we are. And the perfect plan for a lot of these beings that want to actually just have access to the earth is to throw wrenches into the works and saying, hey, we'll get these humans to sabotage each other. We'll get them to completely just destroy each other. That way, the world's ours. We got it, right? So again, they're seeing the idea of the value of the earth as a resource. And they have utilized, again, throughout ancient times and pasts, even leading up to now, the idea of human beings as cattle, utilizing them as resources, right? So again, we're now starting to see that all of this information is coming to light. This is what's so bright about the modern era right now. All of this stuff that has been hidden from us for decades, for centuries, for millennia, is now starting to come into the light. This has never been done before. Throughout the times of Atlantis, throughout the times of ancient Egypt and ancient Rome, to all of these civilizations that have come and gone, we have never had so much access to information of this nature as we do today. That's what's so special. That's what's giving us this new approach, this new transformation of moving into a fourth density planet. So again, as we move into a fourth density planet, we're going to see that for many of us that are locked in to fourth density, that we are now going to be able to have access to communicate with a lot of these particular types of elemental beings, with all of these beings that exist in different dimensions. And that there is, again, a veil that is thinning. It's kind of like looking at these curtains, and you see that there's some sunlight coming in. It's no longer like a gigantic cement wall where no light can come in. Right now, the veil is thinning and thinning and thinning until the line between it is blurred. And that's primarily what's going to happen, is that communicating eventually with elementals will be as common as us talking to our neighbors. Being able to communicate with ETs eventually will become very commonplace. So we are opening ourselves up into a new dimension, into a new reality, into a new density, where there will eventually be a convergence, a harmonic convergence that comes back, where humans, elementals, ETs, etc. will all start to work together in common place. So being able to work with fairies, being able to work with elves, being able to work with gnomes, being able to work with dwarves, being able to work with nature orbs, with nature spirits, all of that will be capable through us to create some type of union, some type of partnership. Those are coming. But again, in order for that to happen, we need to sweep away all the crap, right? All the crap that has basically been fed to us for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. And so we're cleaning all that up. It's kind of like that analogy I use. You go inside the mansion, you're cleaning up this despicably, terribly, trashed mansion. But we got lots of us, and we're all coming together, and we're going to make this mansion sparkling, shining again. So that is very much our task here on the planet. Okay. Finally, we're looking into celestial elementals. Something we'll get into a little bit more in future episodes, but like our Earth, there are elemental beings that safeguard our cosmos. Stewards of stars, star systems, galaxies, nebula, cosmic gateways, universes, and more. So again, what a lot of channelers will actually start to notice is that they're not just connecting with quote-unquote ETs. Here's ETs from Pleiades. Here's ETs from Orion. Here's ETs from Sirius. They'll actually start communicating with cosmic fairies. They'll start communicating with cosmic elves in that sense, right? But they really say, what is this? Cosmic elves, cosmic fairies? Yeah, they exist. Everything pertaining to what nature, to what life is itself, contains some type of stewardship. So there is a stewardship association with every fractal pertaining to life. So moving beyond our planet into other planets, into other stars, star systems, galaxies, nebula, cosmic gateways, universes, and more. So we move forward into an intergalactic society, we may be hearing more about celestial elementals and their association with our civilization. So again, kind of like I showed in one of the previous episodes of that creature that was attached to the sun and had this little umbilical cord. I again refer to that as a celestial being. But again, there are beings that exist in interstellar space that again would just be common as if we were underwater and just seeing fish float by us, or seeing jellyfish float by us. There are common interstellar life forms. So to me that is absolutely fascinating. But again, looking also into the idea of these celestial elemental beings that also exist that you can connect with. And there's probably even some people listening to this right now that say, I'm contacted a celestial elemental. It's quite interesting. So everybody, that is our show for tonight. That is basically all the information we have tonight to share relating to the elemental beings, to the dimensional beings. So we're going to go ahead and open things up now on the chat. And so again, as I talked about in the beginning of the program, if you guys have questions, just make sure you save them. And now is the chance for you to go ahead and copy and paste those questions into the chat window. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of scroll up the list here and just see what we got here for questions. Okay, so here's one from Phaelax. Phaelax asks, how does 2 dimensions of time influence our daily life and hobbies? Okay, so again, if there's not a feeling about what's being talked about here, is if we're moving into 4th density, that we're moving in also to 5th dimension. So basically we have 3 dimensions of space, we have 2 dimensions of time. Now what does it feel like to actually have 2 dimensions of time when we're moving into this realm? A very good question, so I'm going to go ahead and bring Adronis in for this, and he can share information as it relates to the 5th dimension or 4th density in regards to how that works. So I'll just take a moment now as I connect with Adronis' energy, and we'll begin. Sorry guys. Loud table. Here we go. Terra. Soul Star. Sirius. Adronis. We are here at this time, and we bid you greetings, and thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction today. I am Adronis of Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning in to this broadcast through your internet collective consciousness. As it pertains to the question about 2 dimensions of time, 3 dimensions of space, how is this going to operate as you move into your own 4th density or 5th dimensional Earth? Well, understand that when you are working with 1 dimension of time, this represents a type of solidity, a particular type of solidity on a causal basis. That the idea in that sense of other particular dimensions being able to interact with you in a simultaneity is quite rare. It is again looking into the analogy that there is a concrete wall. Now at times there may be very small pinholes that have actually been micro drilled into this wall where certain forms of intelligence can come through. But when you are dealing with a 2-dimensional aspect of time, you are now starting to see again a veil. And that this particular veil gives you the idea of simultaneous dimensions coexisting at the same time, in the same place, in that aspect of property. And so the whole idea is that when you're moving into the 2 dimensions of time, you are moving more into the idea where you are interacting together with other particular dimensions. You are basically in that way quasi-linear. You are again not quite linear and not quite non-linear, but you are working together within that aspect, and you are looking into octaves as it pertains to other different dimensional realms that are associating, extending, and connecting together with your own dimensional plane. And so they are coexisting in that particular form. And when this takes place, this is again, as being talked about through your discussion this evening, as it pertains to elemental beings, of other dimensional beings that are actually able to crisscross into reality. So when you're moving into that 2-dimensional aspect of time, you're moving into that idea where all of these particular beings, as discussed tonight, can be quite commonplace. It is not so much in the idea, so much of a struggle anymore, to feel that you are attempting to pound against a concrete wall to get through. There is a thinning of the veil. The energies are being blurred. And so simultaneous dimensions coexisting together in contract, in relationship to the earth, in relationship to your reality, can now intersect intertwine, combine, connect, and form further relationship in relation to that regard. We thank you very much. All right, great. Okay, I'm going to move back on to the chat here and just see what we got here. Okay, here's one. One from Rowena, I believe her name is. And she asks, Brad, do Argothans have children? Very good question. All right, let me bring Adronis back in, and he can talk a little bit about that. We thank you once again for your inquiry. Do the Argothans, in that sense, we will assume you are referring to the human race, pertaining to that of the Argothan network, do they have children? Yes, they do. But the whole idea in that sense of their population control in that way is much more on a level of efficiency. It is the idea that they are not, shall we say, moving into this population explosion of themselves. They have developed a very sensible maturity in regards to the idea of procreation. That much in regards to the idea of how they procreate is basically each other, a man, a woman, being able to look into each other's souls and being able to discover the idea of contracts, the idea of agreements. And so the whole idea in that sense is that this is more synchronistically aligned. It has immersed itself in regards to a heavy state of discipline, a very advanced state of mental discipline. And so the idea in that sense of many different Argothans having children is nowhere near to the amount of population pertaining to your childbirth. It is much more smaller. And so the whole idea pertaining to the idea of childbirth, it is a special occasion. It is a special idea relating to only certain specific couples in the idea of the Argothans. So they are much more conscientious in regards to the idea of procreation. But yes, children do exist within the idea of the Argothan network. Thank you. All right. Very good. All right, we will go ahead and move down. Felicia just asks, how do you spell Argothans? It is Agarthans. Argothans. Okay. Moving down. Can you describe elementals? Well, that's what we talked about throughout the entire show tonight. Earth Rooster 1717 asks, what's happening down in Antarctica? Okay, well, again, kind of going on a different topic, but that is okay. I'll just take a moment here. Get some water first. So the question is, what is happening in Antarctica right now? Okay, here we go. We thank you once again for your question. In relation to the idea of the Antarctic, or moving into Antarctica, understand that this was what you would know as a supercontinent that once existed upon your planet a great deal of time ago. In fact, it was not too long in the idea of feeling that Antarctica itself was actually a thriving continent that had as much wilderness, as much nature, as what you may discover in, shall we say, some of your southern hemisphere continents. The whole idea in that sense is that this had been occupied by a particular group that represent the Maya, and that they, in the ancient times, were able to construct pyramids, construct temples, and they were basically practitioners of the law of one. And so basically, much of their ancient technology that has been buried in vaults, that has been buried under these temples, that has been buried deep within these tombs, are basically now starting to come forward. You are now noticing that there is more evidence that shares relating to the idea of how Antarctica actually has pyramids upon its surface. But again, it was once a great civilization, a great continent, again, in relationship to the idea of the Maya, and that taught the law of one. And so many ancient masters, very similar to the mastery level of what you would know as your masters of Tibet, existed upon this continent. But again, because of a great deal of continental drift, a great deal of earth changes that took place shortly after the Atlantean disaster, that there were again many other different forms of occurrences that represented an instability pertaining to, shall we say, the lower southern hemisphere of your planet. And so this eventually drifted off into the southern polar area, and again led into several ice ages. It did not take one, but it took several ice ages to actually completely encapsulate the idea of your Antarctica continent. So again, it was once a very beautiful, thriving continent filled with wildlife, filled with many different types of animals that again are not with you at this time. Very similar to what you would know as your saber-toothed tiger, or what you would know as your mammoths. Again, other particular forms of prehistoric animals that actually existed upon that continent at that time. There were also other particular types of dinosaurs that existed upon that continent once upon a time as well. But basically what has been happening in regards to Antarctica is that there has been bases created, installations created, in regards to beings that you would know as the Argothans. And that they, in that sense, in ancient times, created many of these different types of underground installations that led into, shall we say, their own particular inner kingdoms. And again, much of what you would know as the Nazi movement was aware of much of this particular ancient technology that existed within Antarctica. And so more installations were created. Different forms of technologies were brought online and created in this way to create some type of thriving habitat, to where others that can actually live underneath the ice sheets can actually discover that there is technology there that can actually keep you quite warm. And so beneath the ice exists a warmth habitat. And so that is basically what is happening at this particular time, is that many of your rogue elites are in retreat. And they are basically going down into Antarctica to remain. As stated, they are not permitted to leave the planet. They must stay with what they have created. And so basically they feel that their last resort is going into Antarctica. But before that can happen, there are preparations being brought forward in regards to installations that have been created within the idea of your southern hemisphere, specifically within South America. And so basically you could say that they're packing everything up and attempting to retreat into Antarctica. So basically that is what's happening right now upon your planet. We thank you. All right, very good. All right, we'll move on. So let me see what else we got. Okay, here's an interesting one from June. June asks, how is it that man became white, black, oriental, and so on? Are we derived from Sasquatch and then branched off from that into different categories like Oriental, Indian, and such? In a way, but it's not about the idea of one man suddenly becoming one color, then all of a sudden mutating into another color. That's nonsense. The whole idea is that there are subraces. There are subraces of humans that exist in different star systems. So again, you have a lot of the Caucasians that could be found within the Pleiades, that can be found on Sirius, that can be found in Orion, etc. And many of those particular root races migrated into the star system. And of course, we have that particular root race that became the Caucasian that we know. Same thing with many of the other different races. That you have the natives, some that have come from Lyra, some that have come from Procyon. You have Orientals, some that come from Lyra, some that come from Tau Ceti, some that comes from Cygnus Alpha, etc. You have the Indians in that sense. Again, similar roots. All of these different types of beings have come here and contributed their own genetic stock. So much of the 5 root races that we would understand were all part of the primordial substance to connect together, yes, with the Sasquatch energy and actually being able to develop these types of templates. Now, basically, there have been 39 different versions of human beings, from the Homo erectus into the Homo sapien. And so we have that 39 version outlook here. But again, certain forms of beings, certain forms of human beings, occupied different types of surfaces, different types of areas within the planet that represented complementary climatic zones. So it's kind of like looking at the stars, and we see that we have blue-skinned beings here, we have Caucasian beings here, we have orange-colored beings here, etc. Those all represented the respective equilibriums of energy as it relates to that being, to that race, and placed into an area that they would be able to thrive, that they would be able to live in that way. And so basically in those ancient times, certain forms of sub-races of humans would come upon the planet and be placed in certain areas because that was their own energetic habitat. So it's not about one particular being that was a black guy, for example, and all of a sudden he shed off all his skin and now he's an Asian. It doesn't work that way, right? So again, these are all engineered archetypes of different human beings that fit the bill pertaining to the idea of human beings that would survive in specific climatic zones that would eventually come together and connect. So it is the idea of many different parcels of wisdom that came through in each of these root races that connected together and harmonized together, or working to do that right now. So being able to actually have all of these root races come together and form that type of unification, something that has not been done in a very long time. So again, it's these specific root races that have passed the audition, so to speak, have worked together in contributing their genetic stock to have this sub-race of their own particular original root race created, and that would therefore become the root race of that particular civilization in question. So again, it's all part of energetics here, of working in climatic zones to eventually see if all of these beings can come together and live in harmony. Okay, so that is basically what I'm receiving for that. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Okay, Sharanjeet asks, Adronis, my husband asks, how do the characters in The Lord of the Rings compare to the elemental beings we just spoke of? Well, because those are real. Those are real aspects. Those are real portrayals pertaining to J.R. Tolkien. I know you're asking for Adronis with this, but that's basically the whole idea. J.R. Tolkien did not just get this off the top of his head. He did a lot of research. It wouldn't even surprise me if he was connecting with a lot of these particular types of elemental beings as well, too. But basically, everything that you could see within the lore of Lord of the Rings is completely true in regards to the elves, in regards to the dwarves, relating to the orcs, etc. And again, that's actually happened in the elemental kingdoms as it pertains to the idea of the elves that actually became tormented. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of the jinn were actually doing this with the elves, actually being able to corrupt them and actually turn them into these types of orcs, right? That is a very real enactment, right? That is not something that's fantasy. We look at that and we say, oh, it's a fairy tale, right? Here we go, we got elves, we got goblins, we got orcs, etc. This must just all be a big fiction book. No. This is very much true as some type of portrayal pertaining to what has actually happened in many different elemental kingdoms. It's also telling much in regards to the story of humanity attempting to work alongside of these elemental beings. But they would always say that man is easily corruptible. As soon as you wave a carrot in their face, they'll want it, and they just buy into temptation so easily. That is a true enactment, right? That is not falsified. So again, it's kind of like looking at Star Wars. In Star Wars, we have the Force, we have lightsabers, we have spaceships, etc. Yes, it's a story, but it does tell a lot about our ancient past. It tells a lot about where we have come from in that way. Star Trek is talking about our future, right? A fictional story, but basically giving the idea about what is humanity's future. So the same thing with The Lord of the Rings is that it's telling much in regards to the elemental relationship as it pertains to humanity and as it pertains to these other beings. They want to work with us. They want to be able to say that humans can now co-create and work together in a space where they can still be the creators, and we are still working as the cultivators, as the caretakers, as the stewards of this particular planet. That is their goal. They would love to see that, but again, humanity is still learning. We're a very young race. That's the whole idea. We're again just these adolescents, we're these teenagers, and all of these particular beings, many of them, I wouldn't say all of them, but many of them, above our planet, many of the elementals are ancient beings, and they've been around the blocks. They know exactly, what a particular race, how it behaves, can therefore distinguish its particular level of evolution. We still have a very long way to go. Right? There's still a lot to do on this planet. It's not about saying, oh my god, I'm in fourth density. Game over, I'm done, I'm out of here, see you later, Earth. No. You got a lot of work to do, right? We need to really work together. Come together to work within yourself, see the God, the goddess that is within yourself, see the God and the goddess that is within each other, see the goddess energy of Mother Earth, see the stewards that work together with her, that you're working together in more of a cooperation. The idea of procrastination, the idea of doubt, of hesitation, of paranoia, of feeling all of these particular conflicting emotions doesn't get you anywhere, and that they're all just out of bounds mentality. And so we're working to come out of bounds and coming back on the playing field, and we're seeing many different beings, not just human beings, on this playing field. And so that is basically, again, a great portrayal by J.R.R. Tolkien, talking about the Lord of the Rings and how the elementals interact. Again, very true enactment to that. This is probably one of the best fantasy movies, I guess you could say, that shows such an accurate portrayal of much of the elementals. Okay, so we're going to go down here and see what else we have on the chat. Okay. So guys, I'm just reading this out and see which ones we have here. Okay, so mostly just getting some comments here. We're going to take probably one or two more questions. This one here is from Cassie Llewellyn, and he or she asks, what is going on with the area known as the Bermuda Triangle? Well, the Bermuda Triangle has always been active. It's not something that brand new is happening. Basically, the Bermuda Triangle is a stargate. It was actually created through Atlantean technology, and it was basically when Atlantis fell, that particular technology was quote-unquote left on. And so when a plane or boat sails into the triangle, they're basically going through a stargate that leads into another temporal Earth. And so basically, there have been reports of planes that have been missing for decades that have actually just recently come out of the Bermuda Triangle, or boats that are basically just recently coming out of the Bermuda Triangle. So this is basically like a type of time travel or temporal gateway that actually leads you into another particular Earth. So again, sometimes it can be concurrent, sometimes it can just go into a completely different dimension. It all depends. It depends in regards to how that technology is configured. It all depends in regards to how, where the time of the year, all this stuff. All of these different types of coordinations come together. But there has been a lot of reports of new findings of these boats that have actually come out of the Bermuda Triangle. And again, I was worried that, as soon as this plane flies over the Bermuda Triangle, poof, it's off the radar, and you don't know what happens to it. But this is not something that's always happening, so it feels like there's some type of phase that's taking place. Maybe it's something to do with the solstices, maybe it's something to do with lunar alignments, etc., that actually activate these particular gateways. The certain rotation of the Earth, the planetary alignments, etc., it can all fall in between that. But overall, in a nutshell, it is a temporal gateway created back in the times of Atlantis. Okay, so the final question I'm going to take here for tonight is from Keller Zimmer 100, and they ask, Adronis, how can we communicate with elementals? Okay, very good, thank you. I will bring them in, and this will be, once again, our final question. We thank you once again for your question. How do we communicate with elementals? One word. Nature. Nature is where you need to be. You need to connect harmoniously with nature and not just see it as beautiful greenery. You are not just seeing a tree as a tree. You are not seeing grass as grass. You are seeing it as essence. You are seeing it as habitat. You are seeing it as a world within itself. Because that is how the elementals work. They are not just quote-unquote flying into a tree. That tree is their world. They are not just flying into plants. Those plants are their world. So again, different gateways exist even in what you would call the tiniest aspects of nature. If you were able to put yourself in the, shall we say, shoes, even though some elementals do not wear them, of an elemental, and being able to fly and connect yourself into the heart of a flower, you would now be able to see yourself in such a beautiful world that is surrounded by the essence of that flower. You could think of this in that sense as a type of essence travel, an essence habitat. So as Brad had shared, that you could basically see a very small plant and seeing an elemental go right into that particular plant. And to us, in that form, as human beings, well, that's interesting. How did they just fly into that small little plant? But now looking into them as elemental beings, they went home. They are now into a brand new world that exists through that tiny little flower. They are now in a whole new world that exists within the bulk of that tree. So if you are able to look at yourself and see how you can connect together with the forest, and seeing that everything not only is alive, but enriched in spirit, is connected as a true habitat, then this is how you are understanding your connection, and you are showing appreciation to every morsel of nature that exists within your forested park regions, etc. Even in your own garden, for that, yes, represents nature. Being able to create offerings for other particular beings, such as the fairies, such as sprites, again, different types. Some people may decide to live out sweets. Some people may feel to live out fruits. Some people may decide to leave out moss. It's all based upon the idea of what it is that you want to offer. So offering allows you a deeper connection to the elemental realm, because that is equivalent exchange. And so therefore, as you are offering whatever it is you wish to offer, they will now interact together with you through equivalent exchange. And so that is how you can interact. That is how you can communicate with them. You can even, in that sense, ask them to come into your dream state. So if you are forming a very strong relationship as it pertains to, for the example, pixies. You see these beautiful little pixies that in your own third eye, in your own mind, you're able to see them moving in and out to this beautiful little flower. And you say in your mind, to my beautiful pixie friends, I would love to communicate with you tonight when I go to sleep. Certainly. Would you like to leave us a type of offering so that we, therefore, can commit our energies to visiting you within your dream state? Oh, of course. What would it be that you would like? And just listen. So again, being able to channel, being able to communicate, being able to telepathically relay these beings is no more different than how this channel is communicating with us, about how other channels are able to communicate with other beings. It's all the same thing. All you are doing is you are opening up your heart. You are connecting to everything that represents the essence of that heart, of that soul, of that being. And you are able now to form a relationship. That is how channeling is done. That is how communication relating to these beings and other forms of consciousness are done. You are interconnecting yourself to become one mind, one heart, one spirit. So, look into the idea of the portrayal of this information in any way that it serves, and again, enjoy nature. Enjoy it truly beyond what you see upon the surface of it. Go deeper. Just as they can fly into plants, how they can fly into trees and become immersed within that world. Go into their world, utilizing the beauty and brilliance of your own imagination. We thank you once again for the opportunity of this interaction together with all of you. I am Adronis of Sirius. Thank you, and we now return to the conduit. We will speak to you again, as now is forever, and all is one. Goodbye. All right. Thank you, everybody, for a really wonderful show tonight. Thank you again, everybody, for your wonderful questions. I really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun tonight talking about the elementals and the dimensional beings. Next week, we have a special guest that is going to be coming on the Reality Whisperer Webcast, known as Joshua Warren. And we are going to be talking about the Force. We're also going to be talking about radionics, and we're also going to be talking about the paranormal. So that is next week's episode, where we will have a special guest joining us via Skype, coming onto a YouTube live stream here, and we're going to have some amazing conversations relating to these three subjects. And of course, you guys, once again, will be able to ask some questions to our special guest. So thank you so much for joining me tonight on the program, on the Reality Whisperer Webcast. Again, feel free to go to realitywhisperer.com for private sessions with Adronis, private sessions with the higher mind, Rayar, digital courses, free meditations. There's going to be a lot more meditations coming onto the site here in the next little while, and all kinds of amazing stuff. So again, feel free to go to realitywhisperer.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening wherever you are in the world, and we will see you next week. Take care. Namaste, and may it be well with you. Goodbye.